All right, welcome back to the Bitcoin School podcast, where we are telling the stories of Bitcoin educators from around the world. Today, I have a really special guest with me, Jaime Garcia from the Canadian Bitcoin Education Network. How's it going, Jaime? How you doing today?
Thanks for the invite, Trevor. Yeah, doing great. And just super windy day. Spring's tend to be super windy, so glad I could take a moment out of the wind and do the podcast with you. So super psyched
And
to be here.
you're in Regina, right?
That's right, Regina, Saskatchewan, and it's a funny pronunciation because we in Canada retain a lot of the British pronunciation for a lot of the names, and so it's named after Queen Regina or Regina, and back in the days the 1800s. So yeah,
Things are finally thawing out, I imagine. You
well,
guys
we're
are.
fully into spring. Like I'm actually when I get a couple of days without rain, my job here to keep the family happy is to level out our backyard and put an above ground pool so they can enjoy the short summer.
Nice, nice, awesome.
Making it feel a little
So,
bit like Latin America in the middle of frosty Canada.
yeah, yeah, love those above ground pools, man. Yeah, totally.
The
So
happiest day
you're
is the day you get them and the day you get rid of them. Just like boats.
totally like, what? I gotta maintain this. I never
Yeah,
thought I'd be spending this much on chlorine. My gosh.
yeah, rather
So
stack.
you're in Canada,
Yeah,
but you were born in El Salvador, right? So
correct.
you've got a really unique Bitcoiner perspective on things. With it seems like the two countries, at least if you're following some of the news, have a very distinct trajectory these days.
Yeah, it strikes me as ironic because my family came here in '89, fleeing the Civil War, and my dad was shot and became a paraplegic as a result of
Oh my gosh!
just the mess that was going down there. And about a year after that, the FMLN, and so he was shot by the army actually. A
Uh
year
huh.
after that, the FMLN, the communist rebels there fighting the government, put a bomb in our house and blew it up. So we had no home, and
Oh
because they viewed my dad as part of the machine, because
yeah.
he was an entrepreneur, he was involved in the community. Like he wasn't like political or anything. He was just minding his own business, and
Yeah.
um, essentially he made the decision to get out of El Salvador because he feared for his life and our lives and our safety.
Yeah.
So we came to Canada, and the community that sponsored us to come here was in Regina, and so then we stayed here since. I mean, I was young. My sister was also young, and so we
Yeah.
adapted and we grew up as Canadians and half
Yeah.
Salvadorians. Our parents never let us forget um, our culture or Spanish or language that we speak in El Salvador and our food.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and yeah, we just
What's
sort of
the
grew up
pupusa
here.
scene in Regina?
Pupusas, yeah. Did I lose you? Man.
Oops, lost you
Oh
for a
yeah,
minute
no,
there.
you're back.
Sorry.
You're back though. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I just asked, what's the pupusa scene like in Regina these days?
Well, because I go to my mom's house, it's pretty awesome. But
Oh
other
yeah,
than
there we
that,
go.
come and go. It's not quite the same, So
Yeah,
unless my
yeah.
mom makes them, And there's a couple
Oh,
ladies here that I visit too. Their pupusa game
th-
is good.
they passed the test.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
So
I'm one of very few Americans that got to know El Salvador before Bukele, and being from LA, and whenever I would tell people down there that I was from LA, a lot of people don't realize. I think the numbers at one point were like 10% of the Salvadoran population were living in the LA area at one point,
Yep.
and the entire world asked me, what are the pupusas like in LA compared to there? Of course, I had to say like, oh, they're, nothing like the pupusas in El Salvador, but
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like
like,
sometimes they make you wonder though. It's like, oh, this is LA, but it's good.
yeah, totally.
Well,
Oh
what
man,
you're
oh
missing is
yeah.
the ambiance, right?
Totally. No, same goes for the taco scene, and it's a beautiful mixture
Yeah.
in LA. So, how old were you when your family was forced with the tough decision to get out?
I was 11.
Man,
Yeah.
so I mean, hormones are just coming on the scene, and I mean, you've
Yeah.
never did you? I mean, linguistically, was English ever a thing when you were back in El Salvador, or was
So
that?
we had an English class. Like I think that if you there's a couple schools in El Salvador. Like if you went to the British school or the American school, then you were in a English immersion program. I didn't go to I went to like a Josephine school because there's all these different denominations, basically like offshoots of like different Catholic denominations, like the Jesuits, and so the
Yeah.
Josephines, and it was an all boys school when I went, and I think it turned into like mixed after that. But we had one English class per week, and so it just wasn't enough. So I had to learn it on the go.
Man, just thrown into the deep end.
Yeah, but it
That
didn't take my sister and I long. Like I think within the year we like I remember that my dad had a job like years later, like, but I mean I was still young, a teenager, and he got laid off, and so he started his own business, and I remember translating for him. Basically,
oh
like
my gosh.
I like to joke that I made my
Amazing.
first business plan at 14.
Oh man, I love it. I love it. So that entrepreneurial spirit was alive and well. Love it.
Yeah.
So, speaking of your dad, I was doing a little bit of research on you, and you mentioned that it was him that actually turned you on to Bitcoin. Am I
Yes.
correct in saying that?
Yeah, Santos. Yeah, he's Santos is sometimes he annoys me and sometimes we differ on different issues, and I'll we cheer for the same teams, which is good. Otherwise it'd be just we watch soccer every weekend. So Santos is a good time, and and he I started my career as a web developer, and so I came across Bitcoin early on, and I was like,
Okay.
"No, I'll look into it in a while." But that
Yeah.
while turned into 2021, and then when my dad said, "Remember when you talked about Bitcoin?" And because actually Bukele had said in 2017 when he was being blocked to run as a candidate, and so they froze his accounts, and so he tweeted
Oh,
something, and he said, "Yeah, have you seen that tweet? I can share that tweet with
no.
you. It's like
I love it.
iconic."
I had no idea that
Yeah,
that was like maybe the spark. Huh.
it like if that wasn't the spark, it was shortly before that.
Yeah.
Basically, he was the anti-establishment candidate, and they were scared of him. And he was an unconventional young politician, and they froze his bank accounts. And then he said, "Well, that settles it. When we get
Yeah.
into government, we're gonna have Bitcoin." And he tweeted that, and I think that the central bank at the time responded to it and said, "Well, everybody has to play by the rules, including cryptocurrencies, blah blah blah, whatever." They since deleted that because now the central bank has a different opinion on it, of course. But back then they
Yeah.
didn't. So then I said, to my dad, "Yo, viejo," that's how we treat him, right? "Hey, viejo,"
Totally.
the old man, right? It's like
Yeah.
Bukele's kind of a cool cat. I said, like he's talking about Bitcoin. That's pretty punk rock. And he's like, "What?"
Yeah.
And he just kind of ignored it, but he kind of remembered it. And when in 2021, he announced it, I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And he said, hey, remember when you said that he was gonna do Bitcoin stuff? Like, he did it. And
Totally.
I think you should find out more about it, and I went to university, started out in anthropology, got into web
Oh, no way.
development.
Yeah.
Later in life, I got a business degree. And so then he said, like, you're good at computers and you got a business degree, you should really know about this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, he was actually surprised that I wasn't into it yet, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, let me look into it. And he said to me, but you don't get into other kinds of Bitcoins, just in the kind of Bitcoin that Bukele is into, right? And me
Dad's a
not knowing
maxi.
anything, but knowing enough, I kind of
Yeah.
laughed. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, gotcha. Let's stay focused on Bitcoin. It turns out that was
Very.
probably the best advice. It's like, he's like, figure out everything there's to know about this, and
Yeah.
then maybe let's mess around with other stuff. But right now, let's just get to know this.
Right.
Did that, and another guy that put me on to the right educational path, if you will, was
Mhm.
Javier Bastardo out of Venezuela.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Shout out
I
to
went
Javier.
on Twitter. I was following Latin American Bitcoiners, and so then Javier sent me a DM, and he's like, "Hey, you're Salvadoreño, but you're in Canada. You should really like look into Francis," he said, and he's referring to Francis Pulio, CEO of Bull Bitcoin, which is the hat that I'm
Boop, boop.
wearing.
Yep. Shout out
Yeah,
to Bolt
actually,
Bitcoin.
yeah. Francis gave me this hat at the Canadian Bitcoin conference. He was like,
Beautiful.
"Here you go, man." Yeah, we exchanged gifts.
Nice.
He gave me this hat. I gave him a Métis sash. I'll explain that later, but he was pretty stoked with that. So, um,
Awesome.
so then so then I I went into it like with the like lucky, with the right advice from my dad, with the right advice from Javier. And I'm proud to say that I'm one of those people who never shitcoined. So
Whoa.
yeah,
No, you
I
never had your shit coining
no,
period.
I didn't. And I tell my kids this, learn from others' mistakes. Like, really,
Right.
and honestly, this is probably one of the few times that I've done that.
Yeah. Wow.
I quickly realized what was up. I'm like, what? I'm like, I think the cool kids are over in this camp,
Yeah.
even though, like, the what seems to be the cool kids is, the
Right.
Web3 and all that shit. And
Right. All the marketing.
yeah, I was like, I don't know about this. It seems like the people who really know what's going on are over here, and
Totally.
everybody hates them, right? And
Yeah.
automatically, like, I was like, if everybody hates them, I kind of want to hang out with these guys, right?
S- Seriously, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Personally speaking, yeah, I mean, I met Joe Lubin in person and was pretty deep in the shitcoining at one point, but I just didn't know any better. Like I was wandering my way through the darkness and stubbing my toes. But in my case, like I'm grateful for that because it gives me a little bit of grace. Like I'm like,
yeah.
okay, I see you as like you're we'll see you one day, like I'll welcome you with arms wide open. Yeah. And,
And
and down here in Argentina, I'm even, uh, there's so much confusion that's being
yeah,
generated by Web3 crypto. And we're talking about people who are thrown or not thrown, yeah, throwing away, but they're trying to save. And you just hate to see that inevitably when things crash, they're probably not gonna jump off the ship in time.
yeah.
People gotta touch the stove.
And I'm not judgmental on anybody who went through that,
Yeah.
because, like, it was because of them that people like me are able to not
Yeah.
do that, right?
Yes.
So I
But
like,
that's a great point though. Like there are heuristics, right? You've got like for me, it was like, why is this camp of people so close-minded? You know, like,
Mhm.
why can't they see all the innovation, blah, blah, blah? Why are they
Yeah.
sticking to their guns? However, at the same time, it's like, wow, this guy's got a massive brain. You know, this guy is a legitimate cryptographer, computer scientist, X, Y, whatever. What's going on there? You know, there were breadcrumbs along the way, but that that doesn't negate the fact, the amazing fact that like you never went through that phase. That's pretty awesome.
Well, don't get me wrong. Early on, there was like a strong allure, a strong like
100%.
draw, and it's like, well, like the NFTs never made sense to me. I'll be honest with that. I'm like, what am I buying again?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I
What's a
just
rare
think like,
sack?
yeah, like the NFT thing never really like seemed like a good investment to me.
Yeah.
Like okay, there's ridiculous stuff that I'm into, and my wife probably like hates me for it, right? I'll see like a pair of like soccer cleats, because even though I'm like, gonna be turning 47 here right away, I still kick the ball around.
Same here, man. Same here. Things don't
And
work like they used to, but I still have
oh
as much fun.
yeah, I got a big grape for my ankle right now, but
Got a couple toenails falling off myself.
yeah. So then I'll buy like a pair of like nice boots that my fat foot will fit in. But I'll just,
Yeah.
I kind of
Yeah.
like it,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I understand that you kind of like what you like, and you hold them, you look at them, and it's like, man, cuando estaba joven, yo y estos tacos, like when I was young, me and these suckers, we would have done some damage,
Yep.
right?
Now, not
So
so much, but I still look good.
yeah, so then, and I get that. It's a thing. You collect them. My son's a sneakerhead too, so he
Yeah.
my wife's like, "What did you buy?
Yeah.
What you pay? How much for these
Yeah.
shoes?
Yeah.
They look like the other ones,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Totally.
get it. I get it,
Yeah.
but the fact that they were digital, and I'm like, it just like the whole, like right click and save. I never heard that
Seriously.
meme, because it like I thought it like right then and there. I'm like,
Hmm.
I never heard the right click and save meme, because I just immediately thought it. It's like, why do I have to buy this when I can just take a screenshot, or I can like
Yeah.
just save it?
Yeah.
So then that never really allured me, but like, Ethereum, maybe like
Yeah.
Solana. I'm like, well,
Right.
maybe if I put like a few $100 here, it'll pump.
Right.
Early on, it was an allure, but I just like, no, man. Santos said Bitcoin only, and
Shout out to Santo.
yeah,
Yeah. Viejo.
yeah.
What a
So
man.
then, that's how it all began, and honestly, like, not that, if you don't want to segue there right now, it's okay, but that's kind of when I saw the Mi Primer Bitcoin course in Spanish. I hit up John Dennehy right away, and I asked, when is this coming out in English? Because like, this is really cool in Spanish, and I think this is gonna do
Right.
wonders for El
Right.
Salvador and Latin America. But there's so many people in the English speaking world that need this. And I was
100%.
so psyched. And then he's like, you know what? I contacted him in like early 2023, and he's like, we got the English manual coming out right away. And
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
by May, I was
Yeah.
like teaching the first course. And I'm
Dude,
like, I'm not a teacher, but I'm just
let's
gonna
do it.
LARP my
Yeah.
way through this, So
100%. 100%. Love it. Yeah. That's interesting because yeah, in Spanish, of course, we always equate Bitcoin education with the developing world and how people who are unbanked, they especially need it. But man, the pain points that are happening in North America, I always tell people it reminds me of Argentina 10 years ago, where inflation's starting to kick up and you're seeing people tweet out like, hey, food's getting pricier, what's going on, like I can't afford rent. Like, housing affordability in Canada is worse than ever. In the U.S. as well. I'm a former mortgage broker myself, and my coming to Jesus moment was like, I can't in good faith be putting
Mhm.
people into these products when I know that the way to preserve your purchasing power is in Bitcoin. Yeah, there is something to be said about stowing away with your house being your battery, but I mean, man, the English speaking world in the Americas, needs Bitcoin education just as much. It's a life raft for everyone. It's just the people that are closer to the money spigot, being in the more developed world or whatever, they're going to be some of the last people to recognize the failure of fiat and its downfalls. But I imagine, anyways, going back to you reaching out to John, he's like, holy crap, I've got a Salvadoran Canadian dude here. This is fate. Like this has got to
Yeah.
be, like, this is my human bridge between what's going on down here and Canada, and let's go.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think like a lot of things when they work out, it's sometimes just luck and timing, right? My girls are a little bit older now. The boys are out of the house. Like, I'm not involved parenting all the time. Although, I
Yeah.
coach soccer and flag football, and that's fun. But like I remember like 10 years ago, I was in the thick of things. That's probably why I didn't get into Bitcoin, because you're like
You're
raising these little critters, and
yeah.
and it's you got no time, right? And then
You're
like
just
all of
trying to
a
keep
sudden,
your head above water at that point, let alone
exactly.
dig into falling down the rabbit hole.
Exactly. And then so and then for so many people that's like that, and then they have so many more expenses, yet they're not
Yeah.
earning as much, and that's
Yeah.
where I was. And I mean, I was lucky enough that I maybe I didn't experience the pain as much as some of
Yeah.
the parents right now are with little ones are experiencing that pain. But for me, it was like, okay, I finally have some time. I'm going to the gym, and I'm going to work out and just maintaining the house. I could probably take on a few things, and I took on delivering a class. We delivered a class. People loved it. They're like, "What?" And we had some shitcoiners in there, and they're like,
Uh-huh.
man, if I would have known this, because remember, this
Oh,
was at the heart of the bear market, right?
yeah.
And like like when like ordinals were kind of like at the height of their, first kind of spike, right?
Yep.
And pumping up fees,
Yep.
and it was a bit of a mess, but also like a blessing in
Hmm.
disguise, because it made me adjust, and so I explain things to the class about, just following the course, really,
Right.
and they
Right.
were like, wow, just if I would have known this like from the start,
Oh,
it would save me a lot of headaches. Like here's the fundamental challenge with all of this. And I delivered my first class for this cohort last night, and the same thing happened. People don't understand what money is. And I mean, I'm
100%.
saying this like very almost like, patronizing, but I'm not. I didn't understand what money was.
Same. Same.
And so then when we take them through those first two chapters, and we do some of the exercises, the bartering exercise, the commodity money
Yeah.
exercise, and they actually get to see, right? I have these brown paper bags, and I put random things in it. And then I
Hmm.
put on the projection, I said, we're gonna have a 10-minute time, and that's coincides with a 10-minute block time,
Oh,
right?
nice. Yeah.
So within 10 minutes, everybody has this brown lunch bag, brown paper bag with random stuff in it. There might be like, candy, elastics, pens, erasers, dice. And people are like, what is all this? It's like, okay. And then on the screen, I put, the winner of this game is that whoever within the 10 minutes has all of these items wins the game, right? And then, maybe I give a prize like a Toblerone bar or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, but the thing is that the way that I've designed it is that there's not enough of everything, and there's an abundance of other things. And some
Yeah.
people have some things, and some people don't have other things, and
Yep.
people have too much of one thing, and then they got to barter.
Yeah.
Inevitably, what happens is that they run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
Run out of time. They're like, well, I was kind of getting to it, but it was hard, and we saw that like not everybody had enough, and some people wouldn't want to part with things. And
Yeah.
then second round, I introduce commodity money, right? And I have
Yep.
cacao, but it's expensive.
Ah.
So I just show it as a
Yeah.
prop. We're gonna pretend Smarties are cacao, all right? And I don't know if you know, but you might know, but in El Salvador, in the pre-Columbian conquest, the Aztecs and the Maya and the Lenca in Mesoamerica and the Pipils in El Salvador used cacao not only as food, which they made xocotl, which is now what word for chocolate, right? It means bitter water, but they also used it for currency. And
Yeah.
so then I used Smarties to represent the cacao. And I said, okay, now you can trade, you can barter if you want, but you have the Smarties, and you can use the Smarties to exchange. That's your money. It's commodity. Or you can eat it. It's up to you. We had one fella that was eating it last night. So he wanted
Priorities.
money to eat it. So, and you see that money has utility, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
what's the utility of Bitcoin? Well, you can't eat it.
yeah, another lesson on inherent value, right?
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah. I asked that. It's like, what does it? What's inherent value of money? And then people couldn't
right.
answer it. But with
Yeah.
commodity money, there is inherent value.
Yeah. Before I moved back to Argentina 6 months ago, I was living in Mexico for a couple of years. Got really into I lived like 3 blocks away from the chocolate museum in
Oh,
Mexico City,
nice.
so
Oh, you know
got to
this
that.
thing.
Yeah. So there, like, I had no idea that there was so many different traditional chocolate drinks from the Aztecs, etc. So got really into well, I was already into coffee, but the coffee and hot chocolate scene there is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But now I believe you that you studied anthropology previously.
Yeah.
What was the third? You said the Linka?
The Lenca.
Yeah.
The Lenca are the people who they occupy eastern, north, well, not no, like southeastern Honduras, and kind of like
Okay.
northwestern Nicaragua, some of northwestern Nicaragua,
Okay. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the east of El Salvador. The Lenca
Ah.
people. Lenca
Yeah.
people. The Lenca means jaguar people. Jaguar is their sacred animal,
Yep.
and the site of where Bitcoin City is supposed to go is
Ah.
there is a volcano. There is a dormant volcano.
Yeah.
Of course, you can tap into the geothermal
Right.
uh, fields deep in, because every volcano still has that, right? Even
Totally.
though they're not active, you can still tap into that. But that volcano is called Conchagua. In Conchagua means the site of the jaguar, or the volcano of the jaguar, right? So I'm sure I'm gonna get corrected on this. Somebody's gonna say, "Oh,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Leave the
yeah,
anthropological corrections in the comments.
yes, absolutely."
Interesting. Is there any bit of I almost said it in Spanish, drama around the let's call it the geothermic drilling going on in these sites that are close to like these kind of holy spots, or like the quote unquote exploitation of these rural
Yeah,
sites?
resources. Yeah.
Yeah, like
So
the Malthusian pushback.
yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, I think that El Salvador has kind of lost its like spiritual heritage to
Mm,
our indigenous past.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that has happened over many millennia, right?
Yeah.
They or sorry, many centuries.
Yeah.
Um, they would try to beat the Indian out of you. That's what they used to say, right?
Huh.
And so people like kind of didn't want to identify with their indigenous past or any of their indigenous heritage, and so
Yeah.
that's it's really tragic. But I think that a lot of
Yeah.
people have been trying to revive that, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of connection. And so, sadly, I think that there is less pushback on that aspect of things that there is on
Okay.
maybe the expropriation of like property for development, right?
Right. Right.
So,
So
and that happens anywhere where there's development. It's not unique
yeah,
to El Salvador. Like I remember here in Canada,
100%.
there's the XL Keystone pipeline that would have
Yep.
been a net positive actually for both the US and Canadian, all
Yep.
populations, including indigenous. There was a
Mm-hmm.
huge pushback because,
Yep.
well, frankly, I think the corporations botch that too. Like, they just
Right.
don't know how to like approach these things so that there's mutual benefits to the populations, right? And I
Yeah.
think that like people just need to learn, right? Because if you think
Right.
about sovereign individuals and expropriating their properties, like that's a direct affront against their individual rights and liberties, right? So how
Right.
do you go about it and say, okay, well, you have valuable property here and
Yeah.
it's going to have some benefits. There is probably
Uh-huh.
some consequences because there's going to be like byproducts of contaminants or whatever,
Right.
what can we work out here? But I don't think those conversations ever take place in good faith, and that's why we have
Right.
the loony woke left taking over some of these movements, and then you have all
Yeah.
you know basically a stalemate in El
Right.
Salvador. Something maybe not to that degree is happening, but I think there's a minor discontent in the expropriation of property for the development.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just a process that needs to go through. Most of
Right.
what around Conchagua, it's La Union, which is the department where this is going to go, is one of the less populated
Interesting.
departments. And so
Huh.
then, it was chosen because there's some development that could take place there without
Yeah.
impacting a large amount of the population,
Hmm.
right? There's actually
Yeah.
probably better spots to do this closer to San Salvador or somewhere else. But they've
Yeah.
chosen spots strategically, and there's also a port that is nearby, and there's
Ah, right.
right.
Yeah.
So then it makes things easier to bring in equipment and all
Right.
the supplies that you'll need to create a
Yeah.
city. Right. This
Yeah.
is an
All that
aspirational
can
project.
right. Right. Yeah, I imagine everything can pop down from Houston or
Yeah.
a lot of people don't uh I don't know, acknowledge like the Caribbean side of Central America and all the advantages, to being on that side of a major waterway as well. It's
Mhm.
yeah, it's I don't know.
La
Um,
Union is closer to the canal than because El Salvador doesn't have a Caribbean coast, so it's La Union is
oh,
closer
my
to the
bad, sorry, my bad. Yeah,
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 but it's exactly what you're thinking of. It's closer to the Caribbean coast that has access to
right,
uh to yeah, like from Texas or fuel from Venezuela
right, right, right.
or the
Yeah,
European market. So
every passing day, less and less coming from Venezuela currently.
yeah,
Well,
but let's be honest. I mean, Venezuela is still selling a lot of oil to the US.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's workarounds that
Yeah.
they've figured out. Yeah, they figured out the hop. It's not technically Venezuelan if we sell it to someone else before we sell it to the gringos. Um, so that brings up a interesting point. You've written several nuanced articles for Bitcoin Magazine about just the breakneck pace of development going on in your home country, and you've provided some great kind of sobering, balance to the never-ending bullishness coming from the rest of the Bitcoin world on El Salvador. Man, was it a week ago or so? We had the inauguration, or the second inauguration of Bukele, and our president, Argentina's president, showed up there. And you mentioned in your most recent article, like some of the challenges that are facing the country now. It's almost like phase 2 now. It's like strong arming the Maratrucha and kind of whipping certain things into shape. It was almost like the easier part, right? It's easier to play that game of might makes right, but now it's a whole different ball game, to put it in US terms. So like, what in your opinion are some of the big challenges facing Bukele in round 2?
So, security has to be permanent, and I think that a lot of people want that to continue, and I think they will continue to give either Bukele or somebody with similar ideas mandates if that is preserved. People love Bukele, and although constitutionally he cannot serve for a third term, it could very well be a path for him to do that if the Constitution is reformed. And that is a very, very high possibility, because in the congressional legislative assembly elections, Bukele's party, Nuevas Ideas, New Ideas, had a super, super majority. And the thing is that you had the UN, the EU, the OAS all observing, and they're like, yeah, people like him. I mean, there's no shenanigans happening here.
The elections were audited, and no significant irregularities, no shenanigans, no monkey business was.
And the thing
was on the up and up.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing about elections is that people don't go with like a whole policy booklet. And it's like, they don't do like a table chart comparison of like, this is my party and these are my like top 10 issues that I want to address. People go with one, maybe two, tops 3 ideas of what they want their government to do.
Right.
And they will reward you. I've heard this from some Canadian politicians before, and I don't know if there's truth to this or not, but I've heard it enough that I think it makes some kind of sense. The governments don't get voted in, governments get voted out.
Yep.
So if you think about like Bukele's first mandate, he only won it with 53% of the vote. So Bukele at that point didn't get voted in. It's just that there was a rejection of the old guard, and then Bukele kind of came in, and people did like him. I mean, because he had a track record of being a mayor in two cities, and he improved the quality of those 2 cities. But then for this one, something unusual happened. They weren't going to vote him out. They gave him an even bigger mandate, not just to him with like an 85% mandate, which is unheard of.
Insane
but also
numbers.
The assembly got like a huge mandate, and then the towns and like their mayorships, right? They got the majority of the municipalities, right? So he has like a lot of like faith from the population to carry out. They rewarded him for addressing the number one issue that they went to the ballot box with. When they went to the ballot box, they weren't necessarily saying Bukele, although they did, but they were saying he deserves a second mandate because he's addressed the most important issue for the Salvadoran population. If you think about it in somewhat philosophical terms, where I don't know if you know who or if you've ever seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's
Right.
basically a pyramid where like your most carnal needs are met, which is like air and food and water. And after that, it's basically shelter and security, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Then everybody has this, unless the gangs come.
Right.
So the next thing is security, shelter. Well, the gangs
Yep.
are taking that away. And
Yeah.
then like and then you start to get then you need love. I would
Yeah.
say that love probably is like foundational, but you know, then there's
Yeah.
love, you know, more self-aspirational things. And then at the pinnacle, like, you know, you look at developed countries like Sweden and Japan, they got like high-speed rails and, you know, all these
Totally.
engineering, you know, wonders, which El Salvador
Yep.
does, because
Right.
we could barely breathe the air. We
Yeah.
could barely drink the water.
Yeah.
We sometimes were kicked out of our own shelters by the gangs.
Oh
So then
man.
when you think about that model, Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid, and he's addressed the two bottom bases of that pyramid,
Totally.
people are gonna be like, okay, now we can get to the other stages of the
Yeah.
pyramid. But
Yeah.
if
And we've
we
got
don't
an
address
operator.
it, and we've had
Totally.
like over half a century or more where we couldn't address these two things, how
No.
can we expect it to address education? How can
Yeah.
we expect to have like good infrastructure? How can we
Right.
expect to have good roads, environmental regulation that's good for the population?
Yeah.
How can we be expected to, you know, do aspirational things
Totally.
when our very basic needs aren't being met? You know, it almost seems like
Yeah.
a waste of resources to try to do like these things when like the fundamental things aren't done. And so he
Right.
addressed that. And so his challenge now is, okay, now we've got this. How can we improve? Infrastructure, he's already doing it. So I think like the infrastructure, he's well ahead. And
Mm-hmm.
because he understood that if you want to invest in the here's the challenge. El Salvador is a net importer. We don't have oil. We can barely produce our own food. In fact, we import most of our food.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing we have is services in a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
country, you know, tourism,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Um, we can't produce any resources to export. So then the economy is the other thing
Right.
that's what he needs to focus on. Infrastructure
Yeah.
is being focused on, and infrastructure is needed for the economy to thrive. And
Yeah.
once the economy thrives, once and to a degree that's being addressed because infrastructure drives a lot of economic activity. Okay, who's going to build
Totally.
these roads, right? Well, we need
Totally.
contractors. We need to,
Yeah.
you know, put people to work, right? And so I mean,
100%.
you know, we all hate government, but like government does have a huge hand in
Yeah.
you know, getting these things going, right? And then
Absolutely.
there's your
Absolutely.
multiplier effect that, you know, now this guy's gonna need some coffee, he's gonna have to go and get some pusas at lunch, he's, you
Yep.
know, they're gonna have to sell him steel-toed boot,
Yep.
hats, all the things that he
Yep.
needs to work. And now he's gonna have a little extra money, and because he's not getting the shakedown from the gangs, instead of
Yeah.
paying la renta or the taxes
Yeah.
to the
Right.
gangs, he's going to be able to take his family down to the park and enjoy the day on a Sunday, right?
Oh
So,
man.
so then that's where it needs to go. But then like the quality of the pay, the quality of the jobs has to stay high, right? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of what is going to throw a bit of a challenge here is that influx of capital in international Bitcoiners wanting to settle in El Salvador and take part of this transformational um, event that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
are probably going to come in and buy property ahead of of Salvadorans. So there's going to
Yep.
be a bit of gentrification. Again, this
Yeah.
is not something that like is unique to El Salvador. This happens anywhere where there's development, right?
Yeah.
How does the Bukele government navigate through that? How
Yep.
does the Bukele government ensure that people don't feel left out, and they
Right.
feel like they are part of the prosperity, right?
Mm-hmm. It's so easy to point the finger at the outsiders, you know.
Yeah,
If something's going wrong with you, it's always the foreigner, you know. It's always the outsider one way or another, you know. Life's more expensive for me now because the Bitcoiners are driving up rent and real estate and luxury goods and whatnot.
exactly. Except that here's the thing, and this is what I think that the most phenomenal change that's taken place in El Salvador, despite all the great things that I've sort of mentioned that have been addressed in a very short time, is the changing of mindsets. The changing of the mindsets, and then he talked this about this in his speech at the
Yeah.
inauguration, on the second inauguration of his presidency. He said we must battle against a mindset of failure. He called it la mentalidad del fracaso. You
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
the failure mentality, right?
Yep.
And then because then if we expect, especially as like if we want to transform a country, and then our mindset is like, well, no, like the government has to do this for me, then I'm sorry, you're not gonna be part of that prosperity.
Yeah.
But if you're
Yeah.
like, you know what, I might just be and I understand that this might be perceived like I'm speaking from a place of privilege, and I acknowledge that I am.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do absolutely nothing, you will still benefit from the activity of not having the gangs around anymore. But
Yeah.
if you put a little bit of effort, your fruit stand is not going to be just a little one, but a bigger one. And then you'll
Mm-hmm.
be able to do that. And maybe you
Yeah.
can't provide an amazing lifestyle for yourself today, but your children will have the opportunities. And I think that
Yeah.
things like this, having the kids take this course and
Oh my gosh.
understand, puts them in a category apart from the
Oh,
rest of the world, because they have this knowledge that is going to be essential for not just for Salvadorans, but for the world, because it's better money, it's technology that people don't
yeah.
understand, but once you get it, it's very
Yeah.
useful. And
Yeah.
companies are flocking to El Salvador. There
Yeah.
there is Strike.
Mm-hmm.
Ocean just moved down there.
Yep.
Arc is moving down there.
Yep.
There's Blockstream and Bitfinex, and there's numerous companies that are already there.
The biggest of the guns, Google, is setting up shop.
Yeah,
It's so regulatorily
advantage. Yeah,
favorable
yeah.
to operate on the future rails of digital scarcity.
Oh,
It's
look, you can be a company that has nothing to do with Bitcoin, but say,
Mhm.
you know what? Maybe we should set up a small office and have like a bit of a sandbox about how this is going to work in a
Yeah.
country. We're not encumbered by regulations and laws to do this because it's legal tender.
Yeah.
Let's go do that without
And,
disturbing all of your other operations internationally.
yep.
I mean, like, if I was advising a company, that's what I would say. You know
Oh
what?
my
Well, why don't you
gosh.
allocate like 2% of your, R&D budget to do this in El Salvador? And is
Yeah.
2% going to be enough? Of course, it's El
Yeah.
Salvador. It's
Yeah.
inexpensive right now.
Totally. And the central planners, the weaponization of the SWIFT network and the US dollar is doing all the marketing that some of these massive corporations need to investigate, operating on the future of monetary rails, when they're seeing whoever it may be fall out of political favor, they're just switching off their assets, and uh uh what's the word I'm looking for? Commandeering,
Hmm. Hmm.
enemy assets. All of a sudden, people are realizing the USD is just another weapon of the U.S. government now. We should be. I mean, it's the whole reason for the BRICS initiative, right? Even though that's dead in the water, dead on arrival, I should say. But
I
yeah,
you know I don't think the U.S. can stop this. I think that that's why the ETFs have arrived. It's like they realize that there's no putting this genie back in the box, so they're
yeah,
trying to sort of you know think of ways that they can financialize Bitcoin back into the
totally.
fiat system. And
It,
so, but I think I mean, to their credit, I think that that might work for a lot of like the Americans
yeah,
for a while,
yeah,
for
yeah,
a while. Uh, but
yeah,
um, but I don't think that they can like it's imminent. I think, and I think that
yeah,
um, like I really think that there's many other countries acquiring Bitcoin quietly,
yeah, yeah. Agreed.
including the U.S., including the U.S.
Yeah. Um, I mean, we've seen. I think the ETFs in Hong Kong are like for like. They're not doing the cash creation take. Well, I mean, the competition's on. And I hope that these products in the U.S. will ultimately feel the heat and have to bend the knee to doing like for like products. Which would be true Bitcoin, truer, let's say. And man, there's a lot of me hace ruido that it's cash out, and there's so much being gobbled up, and the price action. I don't know. It seems like there's some Wall Street fuckery going on still that doesn't quite. It's not watertight for me. So we'll see how that evolves. Um, Forgive my ignorance. What's the ETF situation in Canada?
We've had ETFs since 2022 here. I
Wow.
think this was the testing ground for ETFs.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys
So
have been ahead of the game on like marijuana stocks, Bitcoin ETFs. Yeah, that could very well be like the sandbox approach.
yeah. I
In,
mean, and I think in a way Canada is the US's sandbox. They'll be
yeah.
like, let's see how these things go up there. And
Yeah.
we're very similar, right? Other than Quebec, which I
Yeah.
think is a very unique and distinct society status.
Yeah.
I was just in Montreal, and like I can completely understand how they view themselves as kind of separate from everything else that goes on
Right.
in Canada. But definitely we have a lot in common, and so it's a test ground for a lot of things. I think
Mm-hmm.
product development, in this case, the ETFs, right?
Yeah.
And Americans, to be honest, could always invest in Canadian ETFs. So I think you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it makes you a huge difference once they're traded in the American markets for people to want exposure,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah,
Was
I
the
mean,
Canadian Bitcoin conference in Quebec? Was that
yeah,
where you
Montreal,
guys had it?
yeah,
For me, it seems like with that independent spirit that's ingrained in Quebec, it seems like the natural choice to foster that
yeah.
Bitcoiner
That's where
mentality.
Bull Bitcoin came out of. That's some of the very first meetups in Canada were in Montreal, right? So
Okay.
it's got like a very vibrant Bitcoin community, and a lot of OGs come out of Quebec. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
super
Seriously.
respectful for that.
So, yeah, I imagine you came out of that conference having made some new contacts and seeing some of the various initiatives going on around the country. And let's get bullish on Bitcoin in Canada. Tell me what's going on. Despite like the news that someone from abroad may see about government overreach, et cetera, it
It's
seems
all noise.
like the Canada Bitcoin community is on fire. There's so much going on.
It frankly, I think it's all noise, and I think that our prime minister kind of like does a lot of media kind of
Yeah.
things that attract the noise. But I would say that Canada's got one of the most favorable Bitcoin environments.
Okay.
like again, we had those ETFs, and I agree that ETF, that's probably not where you should go, but like, we did have a
It's
whole opposition like the SEC put up
yeah,
with the American ones.
it's a heuristic for sure. 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, they are getting a little tighter. Like we had KYC free access to Bitcoin for some time actually,
Right.
and it's pretty accessible for people who wanted that to get it. I think it's still quite favorable, right? And a lot of like developers, core developers, really important people
Yeah.
came out of the Canadian Bitcoin space, and so I
Yeah.
think that there's still a lot of bullishness in Canada despite some of the political noise. I think that we came out with we had three call to actions in our presentation in Montreal. The first one was that we need the workbook in French, not just for the Quebecois and the
Hmm.
rest of the French communities across Canada. In Saskatchewan, we have the Franciscois community, which is French speaking communities and Métis
Hmm.
throughout Western Canada, but also a lot of African countries, France,
Yeah.
Belgium,
Yeah.
right? So
100%.
we need to translate the booklet so that people can learn in French, where
Yep.
French is spoken. Haiti as well. So we have
Yeah.
and I think we have contributors from Haiti. And so one of the
Yeah.
call to actions was to get more translators, and we've done that. So right now, as I look in the Telegram group, there's a lot of work being coordinated to get that translation done,
Yeah.
which to me is like not just a checkbox, but a bit of a feather in my cap. I'm not saying that I'm responsible for that, but it was one of our main call to actions
Love
because I
it.
think the team recognized that like how could we be here based out of Canada and not have a French workbook, right? So
Right.
hopefully before the end of the year, my hope is that we have something and that is available in Quebec as
Yeah,
well as
the workbook and the lesson plans, we've
yeah,
Spanish, English, French, Mandarin,
yeah.
I used to be a translator myself. I worked in the translation industries. Those are the four big guns that are going to cover the lion's share of the global population. Actually, here in Cordoba, we are home to the oldest translation school in the
Oh,
Americas. So there's linguists everywhere. I would love to plug into that one day to really orange pill all the all the and the linguistic students here. But that's awesome. So three calls to action: the translation.
then the other one is to expand their educators network,
Yep.
and then the last one was to if you can't get involved as a translator, if you can't get involved as a teacher, then if you have the means to support education
Yeah.
efforts to promote Bitcoin globally through donations, right?
Yeah.
And so I think out of the three, that's probably the least important, but it's also super necessary for the program to
Man.
get funding.
Yep.
But when it comes to the education network, we grew our Telegram group from having like 6 people to now like over 60, and
Wow.
very engaged. And I'm sharing every day. I'm sharing tips. People want to know how to get started. You know,
Yeah.
they're like, how much do I need to like spend in order to get props and stuff like that. So I've created an Amazon list of people for people so that they can like just go to the link and then download or go and buy some props like fake money or like gold doubloons, the Spanish doubloons, gold doubloons,
Yeah.
um like
Smarties.
yeah, whatever, right? So clear safe boxes, all in these are optionals, right? Like whatever you want to do
Right.
with your class, like you can make do with things you got around the house, right?
Yeah.
And even if it's just a link so that it gives you an idea of how you can adapt your class with similar props, right?
Love it.
um then just costing like what the average facility is to rent, what
Oh,
the
awesome. So
average honorarium.
yeah, very cool. like a almost like a plug and play, like, okay, this is
Playbook.
the funds that are going to be involved to
Yeah.
get the most bang for your buck one way or another.
Exactly. I mean, we figure that it's about $3 Canadian to run a class of 10 people with the printing of books, the buying of the
Yeah.
props, and like I don't charge anything for my time. I do it because, like
Yeah.
I have no idea. People ask me, it's like, well, what's really in it for you? I'm like, I don't know. I just enjoy it. Like, I really don't.
Man.
I'm like, I'm not an OG whale, so like, I don't have a.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
in fact, I think shortly after I got some Bitcoin, I had a boating accident, so I have none. So I'm trying to just
Oh
teach people.
man.
I'm just trying to teach
Oh, I'm
people
so sorry.
how to get some and how to hold on to it, right?
Oh
I ended
man,
up
I have so many
fortunate
friends that
situation.
they're horrible maritime sailors. They're just
Yeah.
terrible with boats, man. Just
So, but yeah, like I mean, I'm just I do it because it's enjoyable to me, and then but I do put in, it's like if you are going to charge for your time, here's kind of like a
yeah.
honorarium, right? Because like you might be the organizer and you might not be charging, but can you expect that from other teachers, right? So you got to work
Yeah.
the costs. And even if you don't end up charging everything, those are the expected costs. And like
Right.
anything that is for free behind the curtain always has a cost, and so you have to
Right.
cost it. So once you have the
No,
cost, people can decide how they want to approach it.
yeah, and that's so important. There's so many, corporate treasuries out there that are looking for places to invest. These are things that, boardrooms need to see,
Yeah.
we thank goodness successfully secured our first funds. We're signing the paperwork next week, but putting a price on per student, per student costs. Like, these are stats, these are benchmarks that like a lot of suits need to see, or these are the terms that we need to communicate in, so that there's that ROI,
Yeah.
for various entities. That's great. That's awesome.
Mhm.
And luckily for us down here in Argentina, we're like, well, your fiat and your Bitcoin's gonna go further than ever because local purchasing power has been absolutely destroyed. So we can rent a place for $200 a month. Yeah, we've also looked into, networking like at co-working spots and just trying to make those funds go as far as possible. Do right by those investors,
Well, and
So
I'm just looking at here, like in certain communities, there are libraries that if you offer free educational courses, the library will give you a room, right?
no way, man.
So, so then, I mean,
Holy
like,
cow.
we're already paying that through our property taxes, so why
Right.
not take advantage of it, right?
Totally.
And then
Yeah.
afterward, like, hey, listen, I know you can't buy the Bitcoin standard. There's some in the shelf over there. Just sign them out, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, down here we sorry Safe Dean, but we've got PDFs floating around. Like this is how Argentina works. For whatever reason, even though it's a highly educated population, getting books into Argentina is prohibitively costly.
oh
It's
wow,
insane. So people will find PDFs and people have these huge like old school, long portrait or not portrait, landscape style manuscripts, and you see the students schlepping those around all over the place, and all the print shops have lines every single day because digital stuff's making its way into the country, and that's by far the most economical way to access printed materials. So, by the way, big shout out to the guys at CoinKite. Reached out to them, and they love what we're doing, and they're sending us. Hopefully, it's getting out of customs sooner than later here. But
oh yeah,
they're sending us a big care package with some cold cards that we can use for our workshops, and all sorts of goodies to to help out with what we're doing down here. So
Yeah,
big ups to the Canadian Bitcoiner community for sure.
The brief time that I held, CoinKite was my favorite company for a signing device. Yeah, they're Canadian, by the way. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, big ups to also BT Sessions is now translating a lot of his tutorials into Spanish. So there's a bigger and bigger connection going on between Canada and Latin America. Love to see it.
Yes. I think BTC Sessions, he was already in El Salvador, but he probably needs to make his way down to Argentina for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are going to expect him to speak Spanish, though. It's like your videos, you're very good at it.
It's so crazy. I think he was using HeyGen AI, which has the ability to train on your voice, and then it gives you a perfect native speaker accent in your
like
voice.
So Platense accent or what?
They haven't gotten that advanced. No, they haven't developed the most beautiful Spanish in the world. But no, but it's crazy. So yeah, we're actually hoping to utilize those tools as well to just release as much bilingual content out there. But yeah, there's videos of Millet speaking in perfect English accent with his voice, like that gravelly, and they add a little bit of an accent, like a Latino accent to it. It's mind blowing. It's absolutely crazy. Well, I'll make sure to include all your contact info below. We're here at an hour and 10. So anything else you might want to add before we head out?
I think that it's important to really get behind Mi Primer Bitcoin, my first Bitcoin, in your community. If you are interested in learning, it's free. Download the manual and you can go through it. It saves you a lot of time. It starts you with the fundamental of what is money and what the challenges of the current money and financial systems are. Because unless you understand that, then you really don't see the need for Bitcoin, and then you might dive into the whole crypto space, right? But if you understand that, and then it sets you up for success, and this course covers that. So learn it, and once you learn it, teach it to your friends. And you know what? I talked about some of the costs, but it doesn't have to cost you anything. It's just one part. If you wanted to do it in a more formal way, you can grab your skeptical uncle, your best friend who thinks you're crazy, and your mom who will always support you, and take this 10-week course, and then start with that, and then expand from there.
I've gotten the feedback, like, when are we going to actually talk about Bitcoin? It's like, no, we gotta lay the foundation, And with that being said, like, we consider ourselves at Mi Primer Bitcoin, the like John said, it's the base layer. Education is the base layer. We can build so much more after that, but it's about getting off zero, right? It's about taking those first steps and getting that forward momentum into your personal situation, getting going in the right direction, getting off zero in more ways than one. Awesome. Well, hey, so stoked to have gotten to know you a little bit, Jaime, and just to get a feel for what's going on up in Canada and your unique perspective on the link between Canada and El Salvador, and hope to do this soon. Really, really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, let's do it in español.
Yeah, dale. El próximo. Okay, thanks for being here, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.